Thank you, Terry. So before I get started, I think there's one person I would like to recognize here today, and that is a good friend of mine whose work has appeared in the Journal, in the Transit, many other research articles, and his work, which he calls lithic art, in the form of black and white sketches of many stone landscapes that we've visited. And you saw some in Tracy's presentation today. Dale Saltzman. So when you see those wonderful drawings, that's the guy who's responsible for it. And he's been very gracious with letting NEARA use those sketches. Okay, so let's get on with the presentation. Last June, I was approached by the Putnam History Museum in Cold Spring and asked to give a presentation about the Native American stone structures of the Hudson Valley, which I did. And again, I was asked by a community group in Lake in Putnam County to give a similar presentation, which I did. These two presentations were given to people who knew very little about stone structures and their spiritual significance to Native Americans. Because of that, it was like a very base level education on stone structures. Like the beginners level, most of you are in like the senior graduate level right now. So what I'm going to show you today are starting from that level, but also to show you all of the species that I'm going to show you today are things that I have discovered in the Hudson Valley, mainly in Westchester and Putnam County. So you'll get a sense of what kind of structures are around in this area, and some of them you've seen in the field trips yesterday, and some you'll see on the field trips tomorrow. So the first thing I started to talk about, well, let's think about another thing. As Tracy alluded to, I don't believe that as a white person that I don't have the knowledge or experience to say that any structure is a sacred site or a ceremonial site. So I would leave that to the Native American. I think the Native Americans are the only ones who can definitely say it's a spiritual or sacred site. Most of the sites I'm going to show you have not been seen by Native Americans, and so have not been verified as such. They do follow the patterns and similar in construction and design than structures that have been recognised by Native Americans. The language, I've noted the Algonquin name for each of the structures, and they will appear on the slide. I will appear on the slides. I won't attempt, out of respect for that language, I won't attempt to say those words, but they'll be up there. And I took those translations from Curtis Hoffman's book, and they were prepared by Noam Fashion-Schilling, who heard a little bit before. If time allows, I will talk a little bit about chambers. 90%, 90+% of what we're going to look at now are non-chamber stone structures. The commonality between what we're going to look at is many of these chambers, and this is kind of what Ben was talking about last night, have been interpreted as the remains of colonial farm. But I'll let you decide when you look at them. So let's talk about Native Americans and the spiritual significance of stones. So here we have an example from the Sioux in Minnesota, the glacial erratic. where Native Americans left their offerings at the boulder. Here, closer in Connecticut, a rock that the elders from the Mohegan tribe met for council, again showing the ceremonial importance of a stone structure, a single boulder. Closer to home, in the suburb of Katona, New York, boulders marking the graves of Chief Katona and his wife. And last night, Peter alluded to this statement by Doug Harris, and I like to keep this in mind when I'm looking at structures, particularly when thinking about the preservation of stone structures. And I'll give you a little while to read through that.
Was it movie loss?
Yeah. Okay, well, let's kind of keep that in mind when we look at the constructions that are to follow. Okay, so structures are sometimes appear in groups, which we call ceremonial stone landscapes, or CSLs. Not all of the structures we're going to look at are in CSLs, but many of them are. And I have labeled on the slide if they're a CSL or not, if they're in a CSL or not. So let's go through it, and I'm going to kind of give you a basic visual vocabulary of the type of structures that I found in the Hudson Valley. First of all, this cairns, and there's the Algonquin name. I was exploring the headwaters of a small stream. The small stream came to a cascade. This vertical rock face with a little stream flowing from it. And this was at the headwaters of a major river. And so I made my way up to the top of the cliff, and there on top of the cliff was a cairn with a quartz art, with a quartz piece placed in the middle of the cairn. Why is that significant? Significant because quartz is spiritually significant to Native Americans. Also significance as a ceremonial site or a structure placed at the headwaters of the stream. Also, the thing I like to think about, and again, kind of what Peter was talking about, when we're looking at these cairns particularly, but the other structures, do they have a sense of design, deliberate design and construction? And that one does, particularly with the quartz piece placed in the middle. Here's a site in Bedford that we visited. I've visited many times, but Alan's been there a few times. Again, look at the complexity of those cairns and the construction of those cairns, and how, again, showing a sense of deliberate design and construction. Also, in the lower right, you see the little structure. And this is another fact that some CSLs have, that you find big structures and tiny little ones also. Near Moneyhole Mountain in Farnstock State Park, a large, low stack of stones built on a rock face. Surrounded, again, a CSL, maybe 10 other cairns like that around it. We'll be seeing these two tomorrow on the Dicktown field trip, the Dicktown area. Now let's talk about effigies. So looking at that stone, what do you think? Does that look like anything? Any ideas?
What is that?
Like any other ideas? I thought beaver, but okay, like that. Okay, so any stones like a cloud, we can look at a stone and say, oh, that looks like. So when I see something like that, I said, okay, yeah, that looks like a bear or like a beaver. So what I look for in these is some kind of enhancement, some kind of recognition by the builders or by the Native Americans of something to recognise that this could have been significant. So I got around the middle and I came down on the lower side and I found this small cairn, this small construction. And when I looked closer, two or three pieces of quartz. in that pile. And to me, that was the recognition. That some Native Americans built that pile with the quartz in it to recognize the importance of the stone effigy. Here's another one in Flagstaff. And you can see on top, first of all, you can see this boulder, which looks like that. Eagle, maybe? Turtle or an eagle? Okay, but on top of it, there's this one place down here, and a number of stacked stones on top of it. Again, an enhancement or recognition. NEARA's been there. Turtles, we talked a little bit about turtles. We have turtles that are significant in the Native American creation story. And then we have 3 examples in, again, parts of CSL. I think that effigies in the CSL itself is an enhancement or a recognition of the effigy. So if we saw one of these out in the woods by itself, maybe not, but in a CSL with a lot of other structures, maybe yes. Here's a more dramatic example, a turtle or maybe fish coming out of the mud. All of these stones on top are not natural, they've been stacked on. So we have effigies that are built of stone and effigies that are native rock. Snake effigies, we talked a little bit about snake effigies last night, Peter talked a little bit. This one in Westmoreland, I think, is spectacular. This whole coiled wall coming down to a snake head. Very hard to explain as a climb wall construction. And 2 other straighter ones. Oh, I think some people were at Hawk Rock yesterday. There's Hawk Rock and 2 other birds, effigies. Again, all parts of CSL, which I take CSL as the enhancement or the recognition of that the importance or the authenticity of the effigy. And NEARA's been there too. Remember that day? Very cold day. Okay, this is a somewhat controversial effigy. The Pound Ridge boulder, the bear boulder in Pound Ridge. So you can see that the whole boulder looks like the head of the bear. There's the eye, there's the mouth, there's the nose. And over here you can see an etching of a bear. Now there's some question about that etching. Is it natural? Is it man-made by someone who's not a Native American? Owen Pritchard seems to think that the ears on this bear are brown ears, and there's no brown ears in there. So that's an interesting feature. When I was looking at this is an interesting thing. So when I was putting this slide together, I'm on Facebook sometime, and here's the, I think we looked at this as famous turtle effigy at Spruce Rock, Spruce in the Catskills. And down here, what do we have? A turtle crossing the road. Okay, next we move on to U-shaped structures or presses. So these can be, I found 2 separate designs. One is totally made out of rock like this, and others are built against the rock. So that is one in the Wikipedia area of Falstaff, again within the complex CSL. So I came across this is in Hilltop Hanover Farm in Yorktown. So I'm coming along the trail, and I see this little can-like structure on top. I thought that looks interesting. It's kind of strange. And so I went around the other side. It's like, mainly looking at the winter solstice sunrise. Again, back to Westmoreland. You notice in this crest here, the pieces of quartz embedded in the walls, and Bushy Ridge in Falstaff. Two U-shaped structures built next to each other, facing east towards the sunrise. And here is two in the same CSL, about a couple of, maybe 100 yards apart. But this is what I was explaining with a natural rock face of boulder, with the two arms being built out to make the crest. And here is okay. And here's a couple more. The one on the right seems to have an alignment with the winter solstice sunset. Okay, let's talk about walls. I think last time we talked when people were mentioning walls and how sometimes we've got to be careful of the interpretation of walls. One thing I look for when I'm looking at a wall to determine whether it's Native American or not is where it is located. And almost all of these structures I look at, where are things located? This wall is on the top of a mountain. There are no other walls connecting to it. It's about 100 yards long. There are no other walls connecting to it. So I doubt it's colonial in origin. And it follows the Native American pattern of the spirit wall with lots of holes in it. And also, as we'll talk later, about it's in a spot where it has a distinct southwest view. And someone mentioned that the Native Americans believed that their spirits went to the southwest. So that's maybe the significance of that wall. There's also one of the turtle effigies we looked at is at the end of near the end of this wall, and also one of the bird effigies we looked at was at the end of the wall. So when you take all of those structures, combine the context of all of those structures, I think we can the scale will tip more in this direction of Native America. Here are also some unusual walls. The large one, over 6 feet high, running about 50 yards, and up and down. This is only one of, I think, 3 peaks like this. Maybe 6 foot high at the tallest. Why would a farmer build that? Not connected with any other walls. No evidence of farming or sedimentation anywhere nearby. The one over here, maybe we'll probably see this one tomorrow, where you have this valley, and it's totally filled from the top to the bottom with stonework. You know, if you were building a stonework fence to keep in livestock, you'd only need to build it maybe that long. Why fill in that whole valley? And here's the one in the bottom left is another high point in a wall. When we're looking at this one, this big construction, the big wall filling the valley, up in here there's another wall. You can just see the top of it. And that is this wall here, made up of very tiny stones. So almost joining each other, we had a valley filled with huge stones, and on top, a small wall filled with small stones. Unusual, to say the least. A couple of other examples of small walls here in Blue Mountain, just out in the middle of nowhere. No farms, no other stone walls, just in the middle of nowhere on top of a ridge, just away from stone walls. And Peter mentioned last night also stone walls connecting, short stone walls connecting high points or boulders. So that's a new example of that. I believe that's Native American construction. Okay, curved walls, totally circular. Now, I know that walls like this were built to enclose or keep livestock together. But again, when you look at that context of that wall, it's built on top of a rocky ridge, a high rocky ridge. No other farms, no other walls nearby, nothing to suggest it would be used for farm. If that was in the middle of a town, yeah, you could talk about having a pound or an enclosure, or if it's near a farm, a pound or an enclosure. But on top of a rocky ridge, probably not. Here, this beautiful arched wall coming down from a rock face. You can see the type of terrain here, not suitable for farming. Big rocky slabs, steep slope. And here we have this beautiful arched wall coming down from the slope. So curved walls, another interesting feature. And here's the great zigzag wall in the Hilltop Hangover Farm. Now, I know Peter talked about the whole theory of zigzag, but look at this, look at the length of it. Look at the length of that. What, maybe 40 feet? I'm a little questionable about this. There's a wall off here and there's a wall off here, and it is near colonial farming. But I tend to think that the colonial farmers may have added on to that wall, that maybe it was there and they added on to it. But still, it's a spectacular feature. All right, okay, so we'll talk about split-filled boulders now. This is the site that I came across, and I virtually came at it at this angle that we're looking at it now. So I saw this cairn on the right-hand side built against this huge boulder here. And then when I walked around the side, this is what I saw. It's a boulder that's split 3 ways. One north-south split and one east-west split. The east-west split is completely filled with stonework. And that stonework goes through that crack and joins up with this cairn, which is really a platform when you look closer to it on this side of the boulder. One of the most spectacular structures that I found, and I've shown some people this, and everyone who's seen it agrees that it is an incredibly interesting structure. What do we call it now? The triple. Yeah, we call that the triple. Okay, there's another view. Closer up, and you can barely see the stonework in there. Right by it, in the same CSL, is another split-filled boulder, smaller. Here's another couple of unusual ones. I think they might be limestone. And again, you can see the fills, the splits being filled up with stones. Maybe I've heard the significance is to show where spirits are entering the underworld. Okay, so this, I think we've skipped a slide. Okay, so we're moving on to platforms. This is a huge boulder with this platform, and there's behind there's another huge boulder, and those boulders were joined by platforms. And in here, there is a cave. And this platform was standing on it, points directly north. Tracy gave us a great description of the preservation efforts that are going on in Buttonbrook. This boulder was threatened by the expansion of a traffic accident on the decline. A couple of members knew about this and looked at the plans and decided that, looking at the plans, that it would be safe. But fortunately not. There you see the wall destroyed, the boulder was challenged, eventually everything was gone. So there's we're looking at the effort of preservation in progress. This is an effort of preservation that failed, unfortunately. And let that be a lesson to us all. When we find out things that can be saved, let's do everything we can to save them. Here's some more little platforms. So platforms can be big or they can be little like these two. Platforms, this is probably the most interesting platform that I've come across. There's that guy again, Dale. There. So what we're looking at is a wall built up of rock, and on top is flat like a platform. Okay, so that looks all right. What the unusual feature about that is when we look in here, this is a rock foot. This is a rock foot. All of these stones here are a facade which goes over the catwalk. Here is another view. So here's a platform up here, here's the rock, and here's the bedrock back here. Here's the rock face. So all of this has been built. Here's a side-on view from that. That is the bedrock behind it. What would be the agrarian purpose of that? We'll probably see this on the Dicktown Chamber field trip tomorrow. Oh, okay, so we'll talk about boulders. So there's always been a question: did the Native Americans believe that they were moved, or could they move themselves? So I don't really entertain that too much. The thing that I think about is the Native Americans, when they saw something happen, maybe they believed that they probably believed that the elders had the power to move things, and so the elders could have done that. But also, they probably would have just recognized that as an amazing structure. So let's have a look at a few more boulders and balance boulders. Here's a winter and summer view of a perch boulder in Garrison State Park. You see how that little rock on the bottom is holding up the whole rock. Another one in Tarrytown. This is one that NEARA has visited on field trips, local and conference field trips. Huge standing stone pipe boulder on top of the hilltop in the Wikipedia area in Farnstock. Huge vertical stone. What do we call it later? The thumb. Right, call that the thumb. And NEARA's been there too. And interestingly enough, after I gave my presentation in June, one of the people at the presentation knew about this area and went up and found this incredible. But this is only a find that's relatively in the past year has been found. So this huge rock here, only balancing on these two small points. And that is in the same area as the thumb. And so a little culture, this said NEARA has no culture. So here we have a painting by Thomas Cole up at the Hudson River School, a big council gathering, a council fire of Native Americans. And what do we have in the background? A huge balance boulder. We'll talk about alignments. This is an alignment or a group of stones that I found before Thanksgiving quite a few years ago, possibly lined up with the winter solstice sunrise, which I haven't been up to the top of the mountain to check out. But when I looked at this, I think, well, maybe that's a natural formation, maybe that's a natural line of stones. So as with these, I looked around for some kind of enhancement, some kind of recognition, and I followed this stone ledge of stone, bare stone, to its end, and that's what I found. There was a huge, nicely constructed cairn at the end of that bare rock, which to me suggested that the alignment had some meaning. Here's another very interesting alignment I found in Farnstock. So here we have a stone wall that's coming down from the north from a ridge top, a kind of loose stone wall. And here we have a stone wall that's coming across the valley on an east-west, coming in, pointing to this boulder, which has a huge chasm in it. When you get closer to the chasm, forms this slot. And at the other end of this slot, there's this small hole. So I think, and I haven't been there again to check it out, but it aligns compass-wise at least, that in the winter solstice sunset, the sun will shine down this slot and illuminate that little hole. That sunlight you can see there is coming from there. I think the reverse will happen in the winter solstice sunset. Okay, so the last group that I'm going to talk about, and I borrowed this title from a famous British conference. What were the ancients up to? These are a collection of things which I had no explanation for. There's weird things that come out in the woods. I've seen this more than once where we have a small horizontal walls built against rock faces. Anyone else say anything like that? Yeah. Okay. Another structure that I found in Camp Canopus Hill, looking very much like an Inuit woodstock. These are almost ball-like structures. These collections of stone. This is the most definite, but there's another one here and another one here. What is that? One of the weirdest constructions I've found. Either in sense in colonial sense or in another day. Who would go to the time and energy to construct something like that? Probably Native Americans. Another, not far from the big exchange in Lucille, is Art Stones, just built on a rock face. This is in West Hall. Really unusual. An arc stone, maybe only 1 or 2 stones high, and then the smallest stack there. I've got to go back to that. I think that might be an alignment. I've got to go back and check the alignment, but I'm just unusual on the face. I only discovered this last week when I was checking out the course for tomorrow's Buchanan hike. The stack of stones underneath the rock face. Now, is that natural? Is that the way the rock was stacked in there? I kind of think it's been stacked in there. Maybe like a split boulder. If that crevice goes back, people find the entrance to the overworld. I just thought that was unusual. And I think we've been to this in Wickeby area. This unusual balanced boulder, 3 parts balanced together. Now, if this was in Europe, we might call this 4. Yeah, a dolmen. Most of the are in the woods. This is a huge standing stone balanced dolmen. It's on the side of the street in South Salem, New York. And here we have a huge balanced dolmen in someone's backyard, up and down. And if you're lucky enough, every now and then you're coming up against the wood. Thanks for the photo. Okay. So how are we doing on time? 5 minutes. All right. Okay. Good. So let's look at ceremonial stone landscapes as a group. So this is an orienteering map of a part of Farnsworth State Park where you see the features of the already talked about. There's the pictures on the outside. So on the east side of this huge hill, there are over 18 sites. And on the west side of this hill, there are over 15 sites. I believe that the huge sandstone, the thumb, which is here, is the focus point or the points on the east side of the hill, and also the dolmen line.
And this diamond-shaped split boulder, which is here, I think that's the focus of the sites on the western side of the hill. Why is it significant for those features? Oh, one other thing, if you notice the black dots, all the black dots are boulders. All of the smaller dots are stony ground, and here we have a pedestal or a boulder field. The only evidence of farming is in this corner down here, where these walls are. There's straight lines with dots on our walls. So this is an incredibly rugged area, really hard to get to. Not an area that has evidence of any kind of farming. Why is this significant? When we think about the thumb, it has a wide, expansive west to the southwest. Again, we talked about the spirits going to the southwest, and I believe that's why it's significant. Here's another orienteering map of an area. Here we have about 20 cairns in the valley. And this is the prayer seat, which is here. This is possible alignment. Remember that cairn? Few interlopers amongst rocks. So, again, when we look at this structure, when we're up on top of these boulders up here, what do we have? An expansive southwest hill. Okay, so maybe we'll talk about changes. Oh, I don't know how to say it. Oh, so this is from a field trip we had in this area from 2013, and there is Fred Martin giving his dissertation on the alignments from the boulder, from the front of the King's Chamber. A few recognisable faces there, boulders there. I don't know about this guy. Gale. So you might see yourself there. So in the fall of 2013, I gave a presentation at the NEARA conference in Springfield, Massachusetts, and that presentation contained many of the slides that I showed here tonight, and particularly the ones that I showed about the ceremonial stones landscapes, the past that I just showed you. And here was the point of, and here was the point, and this is a point I would still like to make. When the chambers have been looked at, when you look at chambers and you look at them in the context of colonial farms, colonial walls, colonial ruins, then it's easy to think the chambers are colonial. When you look at the chambers in the context of all of the stone structures examples of the stone structures that I showed you previously today, do you have a different point of view? Can you say the Native Americans were building a huge number of stone structures in this area in the past? Why should we only consider the colonial context? So that was the point of that presentation in 2013. And I believe that to be true today, that when we look at the interpretation of stone chambers, we should look at the surrounding Native American stonework. So what's next? What's next? Where do we go next? Next we go to the boogie down Bronx. So these are some areas that I haven't explored yet, but I've just learned about. So here is part of the website from the Friends of Pelham Bay Park in the Bronx. Boulder sites of rock. So the good friends at Pelham Bay Park have discovered some enormous boulders that they think have Native American significance. So that's one part in the Boogie Down Bronx that I want to visit. Maybe we'll have a field trip there. First NEARA field trip to the Bronx. Next in the Bronx there, I found this record of Indian hiding place and Indian fortifications in Seton Falls Park in the Eastchester area of the Bronx. So there's another field trip there. And revisiting this is a petroglyph on a boulder that was found with our good friend Ed Lennon and written up in the Journal of Archaeology in New York State in the fall of '88. So here's a beautiful turtle petroglyph, and here is the boulder by the side of the wonderful clear flowing Bronx River. I'd like to go back and find that, and also to see if there's any other structures around it that we don't know about that add to the thing. So that's about it. So that's the tour of what I found in